How's it going, everybody? It's your teaching assistant, Carter Ricks here, with Jody Nacy as my cameraman. We figured, since with the stay-at-home order and with y'all being back home or wherever you're staying right now, that sadly you won't be able to go out and go on these herping trips with us. But you still have your 3 independent trips to do. But we haven't taught you any of the proper etiquette for herping. Any of the things that you need to know, any of the things you need to look for, any of the proper ways to go about doing things. So that's what we're going to try and do today. We're out here at Gribble Gap. This is literally right down the road from the health ending here in Cullowhee. It's a nice little spot. The geology department has it set up with a nice little trail and some bridges that go along some of the streams back there. There's a few cover boards out here that we're going to be flipping. I'll be showing y'all how to do that properly. But remember, the first thing that you do when you go out into the field is that in your field notebooks, you need to be taking down your location, the weather, the temperature, the time that you got out here. Days since last rainfall is a really handy thing to record because that can affect what you're seeing out here. You need to just make sure you have all that stuff down and then get ready to go herping. So one thing I want to go over is proper herping attire. Now this varies from person to person. I wear a shirt that depends on the weather and the temperature. So like right now it's about mid-60s, so I'm totally comfortable in a t-shirt. I always go herping in long pants. It doesn't matter what the temperature is. I like the ability so that I need to go running through a briar patch or through some shrubs or anything like that. I'm not going to get my legs all scratched up or covered in poison ivy or poison oak or stinging nettle or anything like that. Boots are also almost always a must, at least some really comfortable hiking boots if you're doing hiking or something like this. If you're doing anything in the water, you're going to want at least some knee-high boots. Maybe waders if you're in water that's up to your chest. But remember from when we went to the pond over on Caney Fork, that if you travel from one body of water to the other, you need to bleach everything that went into that body of water. Make at least a 3% bleach solution. Dip your boots in it. If you have shoes like these, maybe put them through the washing machine and let them dry. You just need to clean them so that you're not transferring diseases and parasites to and from these bodies of water. Those can really be harmful to the amphibian populations there. So one thing I mostly want to talk about here is that you need to pay attention to where you're looking, and you need to pay attention to what's going on around you. I've had a lot of animals, a lot of snakes, a lot of turtles that I didn't even realize were there until I was right up on top of them because I wasn't paying attention. I've also found a lot of animals because I heard them first before I saw them. I've had a lot of times where I've been walking along and I've heard a snake slither through the underbrush over here, or it was basking on the top of shrubs and I heard it move, and that's how I got it. You really just need to pay attention. I know sometimes when you're walking along and you're not really seeing anything, it's easy for the mind to wander, but you can miss out on seeing some stuff if you don't pay attention. So what we have here are cover boards. These are probably one of the easiest ways that you can actually find reptiles and amphibians. A lot of people use just boards like this. Some people use pieces of tin, some people use tar paper, and there are advantages and disadvantages to using each of those and where you place them and all sorts of things that go into what you can find under these. So the main thing I want to go over with is how to flip these. There is proper ways to flip them. The main thing you want to do is that when you get over to a piece of cover board, you want to mostly grab from the part of the board that's away from you and pull the board towards you. You want to do this mostly because if there's something like a venomous snake under here, I can see right now that there's nothing under this board. If I had lifted this board like this and there was a venomous snake under here, he's got an opportunity to tag me on the hand and envenomate me right there before I even realize it. You always want to, if you can, grab a board and pull it up from the top, look underneath it, and you're good. Now if you have a bigger piece of board, I've seen a lot of places that have very large pieces of board. Sometimes those are really hard for one person to flip. If you have another person with you, designate who's flipping and who's looking under the board. One thing I also want to go over is once you flip a board, you need to be ready to grab, because as soon as you flip this board over, a lot of animals that are underneath it are probably going to run. We flipped this board not too long ago, just a few seconds ago, and there was a Plethodon holly, a southern Appalachian salamander, right here by this hole. I wasn't ready, and it darted down this hole and got away. So remember that for your field notebooks, you don't have to get hands on it. All you have to do is see it and know that you can ID it. Even if you don't know exactly what species it was, if you can at least get it down to genus, or at least describe what it looked like, that's perfectly fine. We can even help you figure out exactly what you saw if you didn't get a good look at it. Another thing when you're flipping logs and rocks and even cover boards and cover objects is you want to be careful of any other sort of potential hazard. Now, I mentioned venomous snakes last time, but you're always not entirely sure what you're going to run into when you flip this over. Like as of right now, there's some pill bugs under here, there's a dust beetle, there's some ants. There's always the potential to run into any sort of invertebrate. Rodents really like it under them, but just be careful of things like fire ants, black widow spiders. There's always a potential for a few things under cover objects that can hurt you. Just keep your eyes open, scan really well, especially where your hands are placed on the board, on the cover object. You know, make sure there's not a spider or anything where you're placing your hand. Just be real safe and real observant about it. For flipping cover that's natural, like rocks and logs and things like that, you always want to do about the same thing that you do with the boards if you can. Sometimes, you know, logs and stuff like that are a little too big. Just kind of try and get them up as best you can. You want to always look all the way underneath them. Make sure there's no other little parts or things like that, little scraps of wood or leaves or anything underneath that something might be hiding under. Check those. And once you're sure that you've checked all of it, this is a decently bad example because it's so small, but you want to put the cover back down exactly where it was and cover back up. Do not flip logs and rocks and cover boards and any piece of cover over and leave it flipped. That is a microhabitat under there. There's moisture under there that a lot of species, not just the reptiles and amphibians, a lot of invertebrates, a lot of microbacteria live under these and require that microhabitat. If you leave it unflipped, it dries out and that microhabitat is gone until it develops on the other side days later. So please, if you flip something over, please put it back where it was. So one thing I want to show y'all is that if you ever have a downed tree like this, the bark that's on top of it can be a really good spot for hiding herps. But one thing you want to do is when you're peeling that bark up, you don't want to peel it all the way off and leave it off, because this spot underneath, just like with any sort of rock or log that's on the ground, holds moisture, holds a lot of it's essentially just its own microhabitat. I've seen a lot of people that just take the bark and they just rip it off and they throw it onto the ground. Please don't do that. If you can, just lift it up, look underneath it, put it back down. If the bark does happen to kind of pop off, just lay it back down on top of the tree as best as you can. You don't want to just pull that off and leave it. A lot of species, especially further east and especially on pine trees, really need that habitat. Species such as scarlet king snakes, scarlet snakes, southeastern crown snakes, pinewood snakes. Some of the tree frogs, like the pinewoods tree frog, really like using some of this bark and getting up underneath it. And even some salamanders will use it. So you really need to make sure you don't pull the bark all the way off and just throw it on the ground. When you're working in a mountain stream like this is a good ways up here at Gribble Gap. There's a nice bunch of rocks here. This is a really good spot to find salamanders in the genus Desmognathus. A few things you need to really remember is that when you're working in a stream like this, you probably want to start downstream and then work your way up. If you start upstream and work your way down, all the water that you cloud up from flipping rocks and things like that, you're going to be constantly working through that. And that makes it really difficult to see salamanders if you're working downstream instead of up the stream. Another thing is that you need to be be really careful where you're stepping. All these rocks kind of come together in odd angles. This is a pretty decent place to get around at because it's got a nice sandy bottom in between a lot of the spots, but a lot of areas you're not going to be as lucky. You're going to be putting your feet in between like rock crevices and things like that. Be real careful. Don't roll an ankle or trip or anything like that. When you're flipping rocks, you always want to try and make sure that when you flip it, if you can, that you flip the rock so that the water is coming against it, and that if there's a salamander under it, they can't exactly just hit the current and be gone. Let's see, there's not really any salamander under here, or crayfish. And you will run across crayfish and other sorts of invertebrates while you're doing this. Another thing you want to do is if there is any sizable salamanders or invertebrates or anything like that, you'll want to get them out from under the rock and then try and put the rock back down and then try and get them so that they'll go back under it. If you just put the rock down on top of them, usually you're going to squish them because they've unsettled from where they were under the rock. You're looking for Desmognathus alongside the stream. The one thing you'll find out very quickly is that they're very squirmy and they're very hard to keep a hold of. So one thing you always want to carry with you is some plastic sandwich bags. Once you've got hold of a Desmognathus, you want to just put a little bit of water in the bag. Not a whole lot, that's about perfect right there for a salamander. You want just enough so that the salamander's comfortable. And this way you can keep hold of the salamander, it can't get out of the bag, it'll be all right in the water. Make sure you keep the bag out of direct sunlight, because if you keep it in direct sunlight, it'll heat up the water, it'll heat up the salamander. They'll get really uncomfortable and they can even die if they're kept in direct sunlight for a good long while. But with this, you have the ability to keep hold of it, and then you can look at it and say, okay, I can see the portholes, so I have a black belly, or I can see that it's pretty large and it's got a pale belly and the leopardy pattern on the back, so it's a seal. Or I can see that it has the rounded base of the tail, so it's an echoe. This is really helpful in being able to actually see them, because if you just try and keep it in your hands, you're almost always going to lose it. They will squirm, they will jump, they will slip out through your fingers. They are some of the hardest salamanders to keep your hands on. These are really invaluable. If you can, maybe have like a cup that's dark in color. Joe usually keeps these clear solo cups and wraps them in black electrical tape. Those are perfect for the salamanders because they see that dark opening and then they just kind of go up inside of it. And then you don't have to worry about them slipping out of your fingers or anything like that. You can just have it in the cup, put your hand over it, get the bag prepared, and then just open it up, pour the cup and all the contents into the bag, and you're good to go. So we actually have ran across our first big catch of the day here. We're now over here alongside Cullowhee Creek right here on campus. Like literally the roundabout is right over there. And I've caught an eastern garter snake, Thamnophis sertalis. They can get a little bit bigger than this, but around here you can usually tell them apart by the checker patterning on the sides, the line down the middle, which is usually a yellowish to tannish color. As you might have seen while I was holding it there, it was kind of gaping its mouth at me and looking to bite. When you're handling snakes this size, you almost always have an opportunity of getting bit. And that's scary to a lot of people. But one thing you need to understand is that snake bites, especially from the non-venomous species around here, usually don't hurt that much. Especially if this little guy were to bite me, it probably wouldn't hurt like at all. It might bleed a bit because almost all snakes have an anticoagulant in their saliva, so it'll bleed a good bit. But just like washing it off in water or even giving a little bit of triple antibiotic ointment, maybe a Band-Aid, and you will be totally fine. Even if it was a snake like a big 5-6 foot rat or corn snake were to bite me, it'd be about the same thing. So one thing you'll notice with how I'm holding him, I'm not holding him tightly. I'm holding him just enough so that he stays in my hand, but I'm allowing him to glide through my hands. I'm allowing him to move. This will keep him calm. If you restrain him, he's going to wiggle a lot, he's going to squirm a lot, you're going to put a lot of stress on the animal. Another thing is that if you were here right now, you'd probably be able to smell him. If you capture a live snake, you are almost 100% likely to get musked on. Almost every snake will release a very foul-smelling odor and sometimes poop. Once you grab them, it smells really bad. You usually can wash it off, but the smell will remain and through like a shower or two. It's not that bad once you get used to it, but just be prepared for that if you do intend to grab a snake. But yeah, I'm really glad we found this guy today and I was able to show y'all exactly how to handle a live snake. This is probably one of the better species to start off with. They can be a little bitey, but you can run into some really mild-mannered individuals like this one. And yeah, this is right here on campus. This is right along Cullowhee Creek. You can get garter snakes, you can get black rat snakes out here, you can run into northern water snakes. This is just literally right here on campus. It's a great place to go looking if any of you guys are still around Cullowhee and Silva and you still need to do one of your trips. I'm going to kind of go through how to do HerpMapper with you guys. If you have it on your phone, remember you guys need to have some records on your HerpMapper thing and turn them in with your field notebook. So I'm going to do it with this snake here. So what you do on the app is you hit new record, and it's going to come up with a bit of a screen here that has your location, it has the latitude, the longitude, and stuff like that. Now what's going to happen is your phone's GPS is going to essentially coordinate where you're at. The main thing you want to look at is the accuracy tab here. The accuracy tab is going to tell you exactly about how close to your location the satellite that your GPS is connecting to can get to your location. If you're in spots with a really bad signal, it's probably going to be a higher number. I'm right here on campus, so I've got an accuracy of 3 meters. That's really good. Usually I try and let it sit and wait till it can figure out within about 10 meters of me, but if you can get it as low as you can, that's perfectly fine. 3's good, so we're going to hit continue. Next up is going to be a spot where it's going to ask you to browse for your taxa. What you're going to want to do, browse essentially takes you to like a big encyclopedia of all the scientific names. That can take a bit of time. If you know what you're looking at, you basically want to go to search. It'll then come up and say search by common name or search by scientific name. So we know this is an eastern garter snake, so I'm going to very quickly put in eastern garter snake, and I'll hit search by common name. First thing that comes up is Thamnophis sertalis, which is the eastern garter snake. I'll hit that. Next, it'll ask you to either take a picture or choose an image. I haven't taken a picture of this guy yet with my phone, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold him up here. You want to make sure that you can at least get the defining features of this animal in the picture. Alright, that's mostly of a full body shot. Some species like the skinks have really discrete characteristics for defining the species, such as the labial scales on the top lip or the rows of scales along the tail. If you're putting the animal into HerpMapper, you're going to want to put the pictures of those as well, so that you know what you're looking at, and so that the people at HerpMapper and the people that are looking at these records down the line know what they're looking at. These are records that places like North Carolina Fisheries and Wildlife can look at. The State Museum can look at it for records. Access for any sort of graduate or doctoral student can look at these records and figure out where these things were located and found. Now once I've got a good picture, I hit OK. You're welcome to upload as many pictures as you want with it. For a snake like this that's pretty discernible for this area, I'm going to give it just one and hit continue. You'll then have some spots here for age. This is an adult. If it is a dead animal, you can log dead animals on HerpMapper, and you'll hit the deceased button, and right now it's off because the snake is not alive. Public notes and private notes, you do not have to put any of these if you don't want to. I usually at least like to put some private notes. Like I'll say, found basking. Basking's not a word my phone is used to putting in. Found basking on log by Cullowhee Creek. And that's pretty much enough. Hide this record from the public. You would want to do this if you ran across a really rare species. Like maybe, but you don't have to do this, because when HerpMapper, anything that they have available to the public, they only show them up to the county level where it was found, no matter what the species is. So usually, no matter what you're finding, It's totally fine to put it up there. Usually somebody like a poacher or somebody wanting to collect for the pet trade wouldn't be able to tell where exactly you found this animal. So I usually don't do that. Hit continue. It'll then give you a summary of everything you put in, and you'll hit save record. Now that just puts it on your phone. If you want to upload it, you wait until you get somewhere, like you get home, or if you were to get on campus, get somewhere where you can connect to Wi-Fi, and you'll go to pending records. It'll show all the records that you have in here, and you'll hit sync records, and that'll upload it to the website where it'll then be uploaded onto your profile. I wouldn't do this unless you're on Wi-Fi or anything like that, because this does take data for you to upload it to the Herp Mapper website. So just wait till you get home, or until you get a big amount of records saved up on your phone. So I'm just gonna exit the app. We're good there. I'll upload that when I get back to my apartment. But as of right now, this guy is ready to go. We found him right over here on this pile of debris. And since I'm sure he probably doesn't want to be out sunning right now, I'm just gonna let him go. Go. Alright, let's see if I can get back up there. So this is a black rat snake, or an eastern rat snake. Currently known as Pantherophis alleghaniensis. You'll hear some people call this species Elaphia obsoleta or Pantherophis obsoletus. Probably one of the more common snakes you'll see in any part of the state. This is what most people call a black snake. In the rural areas. This is a really nice sized adult, about 5 feet. It's about as big as they get. Some do get 6, and I have seen a few that are 7. In the eastern part of the state, in the southeastern part, these guys start to get yellowish in color, and you'll hear them be called yellow rat snakes. A really cool species. One interesting thing that these guys have is that their bodies are not perfectly rounded. Their bodies are kind of shaped like a loaf of bread. And the way that works, and the reason for it, is because this snake can go straight up a tree, straight up a brick wall, pretty much straight up anything you need it to. It's the only snake that can climb straight up trees without using the limbs or anything like that. This and the corn snake. If you look at him a little closely, you can see that he's got a good amount of dirt on the body. This one probably just came out of its hibernation. It's covered in quite a bit of lumps, a few parasites. Once it sheds for the first time, he'll be good to go. He'll lose a lot of these. Yeah, just a great animal. And notice, like I said last time, I'm not really restraining the animal when I hold it. I'm mostly just letting it glide through my hands. He's not that warm, so I don't think he came out too long ago. The body's not that warm. Just a beautiful animal. So Jody and I just took a little hike around the pond here on the other side of the highway from the university, over here at the Center for the Advancement of Teaching. And even just in the pond itself, just in the little hike around, we got tadpoles, we got newts, there's some turtles hanging out in here. There's been some skinks that have been skittering on and off the path, and even just going around the trails along Holy Creek, we've seen skinks. We've seen a bunch of stuff that we weren't really able to get our hands on to show y'all or get on camera, but just goes to show that there's stuff everywhere. So y'all have fun out there, be safe. If you have any questions, be sure to email me or Joe. Get some pictures of what you're finding. We're going to try and put up a picture sharing spot on Blackboard so that y'all can share anything that you're finding. Maybe if you need some ID help, or if you just want to show it off. But that's it for now.